Micheal Martin, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Yo, yo, how are you, Jordan?
I'm very well, but more importantly, I'm very curious around how you are. Every now and then I see how you see those people who are like going for runs or like doing some exercise or outside or whatever, but mate, you always seem to be popping up on some sort of long marathon or something crazy with your kids. Awesome, mate. I love it. Tell me, did you have something recently and tell me what it was?
I did a half marathon on the weekend. However, I'm not an overweight dude, but I'm not fit. I've had asthma my whole life, and
Yeah.
then about 2014, like I was playing soccer, over 35 soccer, and I was like your classic super sub. I'd come on for 3 or 4 minutes, fluff a goal, like I'd try to score or whatever. But then my asthma would flare up and I'd come off the pitch and I'd be back on the bench. So then I thought, far out, I need to try to work on my fitness. And then that's when I kind of got into running, just doing slow runs and got bigger, longer length. Um, so I did a marathon. I worked up from doing a 5K run all the way up to a marathon in 2014. But I feel like I failed in the marathon because I got massive cramps about 26 Ks in. So I ended up doing a fair bit of walking for the back end of it. And then I kind of just gave up on running. I rewarded myself for doing the marathon, even though I did a shit job of it, but I did it. But the last year or so, I've been trying to get healthy again. Um, so I've started to try to get back into running, and I'm a person that kind of needs a goal. So if I haven't got something, if I'm not doing it for a reason, then why am I doing it, type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's where I've did a half marathon earlier in the year, and I'm hoping to I've got a goal towards the end of the year of or the start of next year doing a full marathon again. And I wrote my son into doing a half marathon with us. He's 18, so I was pretty happy that he did that. But I'm not a fit guy. I just shuffle along. Yeah.
Doesn't matter, man. I still think like you're still super inspirational. I'm a gym guy. Like I'll get up in the mornings and go to gym and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like I still feel heavy. Like I still need to run or like get out there, and whether it be, running a full marathon or walking it, like I still think, it's a pretty solid effort.
Yeah.
So well done.
No, well, going to the gym's good as well. Like I'm far from a gym guy. I'd love to have more muscles, but anyway, I was just going to say a joke, but I'll leave that. Yeah.
You can tell me off. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can't win anyway. Anyway, you look, can you?
that's
Um,
right. That's right, mate.
Anyway,
Yes.
onto property, mate. So tell us a little bit
Mm.
around sort of your thought processes or philosophies on building out a portfolio over the longer term.
Yeah. Well, my thought process is property is a long game, and you make your wealth out of not so much the cash flow, but out of the capital gain. So you want to get a bit of a mix, which is the ideal, I guess. You want the property to pay for itself as much as possible. It's going to be harder with rising interest rates, but yeah, you make your real wealth out of doubling and tripling your value as opposed to making 3 to 5 grand a year, passive income. But the more properties you get, the you can build up that passive income.
Yeah,
Long term though, long term.
I totally agree. I think I love the old saying of equity or gross what gets you out, but cash flow is what keeps you in. And I think it's times like
Mm,
these that really make that stand out. Like you would have, if you were an investor prior to sort of 2020, you would have really felt the growth come through and felt like, I mean, everyone probably felt
mm,
like a millionaire. I mean, I felt like a millionaire after that growth came through and this is
mm,
super simple and easy and we've all done well done, patting each other on the back. But,
yeah,
if you're in an awkward situation now where rates, maybe you're fixed at like 1.9% and rates start to roll over and all of a sudden you hit with a 5 or 6% interest rate. And it really does change the cash flow things. And if you can't sustain the portfolio with the cash flow coming through and had to sell, then all of it goes out the window. So yeah, I think you
yeah,
nailed it. Like I think you're spot on. And I think that comes from much of the wisdom that you've gone and learned through your journey. And I'm fortunate enough to and partially the reason of getting you on the podcast is to let others know about your journey. But do you mind sharing a bit of your story with everyone?
Of course, mate. Of course, and just what you touched on there with the cash flow and rising interest rates, to give you a pat on the back. That's where your platform game plans comes in, where you can really help to be a fortune teller and tell what your situation is going to be with different circumstances. So you're doing a good job with your platform. But
Thanks, mate.
sorry, mate. What a
I'll pay you in
suck.
beans later.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, you asked about kind of my investment journey and some. I think as I'm a little bit older and wiser now, you certainly learn more from your mistakes than your successes. Is one of my mantras or philosophies, whatever you want to call it. I I always had an interest in property from when I was young. I was the youngest of three, and my brother and sister were a couple of years older, and they got married and bought um, properties when they got married. I always had like 2 or 3 jobs and was a good saver. And I bought my first property at 21, just in a suburb near where I lived when I was living with my parents. And then a few years after that, I got married, and it's hard to believe, but the property I bought, it was only 160 grand. And it went up to 240, so gone up 50%, and we just bought our house to live in. So I made the stupid mistake of saying, okay, I'll sell the investment property, take the profits out to take the pressure off our home. So that was a good decision for a year or so, and then back then, this was might have been about 2003, so it's going back a bit. The idea of taking equity out of your house wasn't as common and well known as what it is now. I'm not even sure if it was a thing. So then, anyway, a couple of years later, I realised, oh no, stuffed up. I still always had a passion for property, so we bought it was actually an off the plan property. I'm a big advocate for not buying off the plan, but and you'll hear why in a sec. But this property in Brisbane that we bought off the plan, it was through Mirvac, so it was like a reputable company. And that property was actually all right. I think it was about maybe 360 grand that we paid for it. And then the next year, back when newspapers were a proper thing, I'd catch a train to work every day, and there was an ad for like investment properties. So I got suckered in, and I bought. I had some slick salesman came over to our house and sold us on buying in a new development in outer Townsville. My dad tried to warn us, saying, "Oh, mate, I don't know. Like, it's good to continue buying property, but these off the plan things, I'm not so sure about it." But I was a bit younger, so thanks, Dad. We'll see how we go. So we bought one in 2005 or six. So that was our second property, and then the property market was going all right then. From about 2003 to 2007, 8, the property market had a decent run. So then he called us back the next year and said, "Oh, like the property's going good. We just released another stage of the development. Do you want to go again?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we'll take 2." So that was ridiculous. So that took like a year to build. So we were paying like the mortgage with no income coming in on it as well, because it was a house and land package. And then 2008 came, and the last 20 years I've worked in the financial markets. So I ended up losing my job with the GFC. We had 3 young kids. And we had the Brisbane property and 3 in outer Townsville. So we had 4 in total. The Brisbane one was doing all right. It had maybe gone up to about 500, so it was up about 150-ish. But the Townsville ones were giving us a lot of grief. Every time a Queensland number, I'm based in Sydney. Every time a Queensland number would call, I'd feel sick, thinking, "Oh shit, what's the problem now?" And essentially, the vacancy rates. I didn't even look at vacancy rates back then. I just blindly believed the salesman. So there was, in this new development that was built, like well over half, 60-70% was all sold to Sydney and Melbourne investors. So it was just a glut of rental properties. So it's when the GFC came, unemployment went up a bit. So the rent came down about 40%. And so we had to put the rent down a shitload to get and keep a tenant. And the tenant, we only had a tenant in the property from about 2008 to 2015, probably about 70% of the time we had a tenant in the property. And then we we're constantly having to get things fixed in it because there were so many spare properties available for rent, they'd choose a better one over ours. So then in 2008, when I lost my job, and then I had to take a pay cut to get another job, and then my wife, she was only working 3 days a week because we had young kids, and she had to go back to work full time. And then we had these 3 Townsville properties which were causing us grief. So instead of selling one of them, I bloody sold the Brisbane one, which was ticking along nicely. So I took the profits out of that to reduce the debt, which I thought would be a good thing. But the big mistake there is, like, I should have sold one or two of the problematic town ones instead of selling the good Brisbane one. So that reduced a bit of debt, which was good. But then, like, over the next 5 years, till 2015, it was like the same thing was happening. Feeling nervous every time a Queensland number rung, and then my wife would say, "Oh, like, have we got enough money to put a new kitchen in, or to do this, that, or the other around the house?" And it's like, "Oh, we can't, because we're putting all our excess money into the bloody investment properties," which gave us the shits even more because the tenants were living in better, like having a better kitchen than what we were having. So then ultimately 2015-16, we sold the 3 off the plan properties out of Townsville. Essentially, we sold them pretty much to the same price as what we bought them for. So over a 10-year period, 0 growth, and we lost out with costs as well. If I'd thrown a dart at a map of Australia, I would have done better, like, seriously. So essentially, from my first purchase in 98, I think it was, when I was 21, to then 2016, having all these investment properties, I'm back to having none because of the stupid mistakes. Like the first one, selling too early. The first one that I paid 160 grand for, 20 years later, that's worth about 800-900 now. So, like, just that one little purchase by itself, buying in a good Sydney suburb, as opposed to buying in a brand new development where the developers make their cut, the builder makes their cut, the sleazy salesman makes his cut, pulling up in a BMW, and yeah, the poor investor suckers make nothing. Yeah.
Gosh.
So the big, and I guess I could have got lucky with buying off the plan property. Like, I'm not totally against them, but I've been scarred. But the main problem was I bought 3 of them in the same development, essentially. So there's no diversification. So another big mistake, So the glossy got sold on the glossy magazines and the depreciation benefits, but as I've now learned, that's not what you should be looking at. It should all come down to the numbers and the location, and come down to the data, and everything else is on top of it. So
What what
essentially,
what a
yeah,
journey, man! I can't believe, you hear so many. Well, you hear people talk about these stories of people who have been burnt through buying, off the plan or house and land estate or something like that. But
yeah, yeah,
you're a true testament
yeah,
to, like, having 3 in the same complex. That's I can't imagine there, and
Oh
it's,
yeah,
you
they
know, just
they
the
saw me coming.
yeah, I know. Well, and I guess that's
Oh
kind of
man,
why you're so passionate about what you do now, is trying to help people not make those mistakes. Because unfortunately, there are still people out there who sell the same stock, and there's people that
100%.
still buy it. So, it's good that we've
Yeah,
got people who've been through the journey and can express their story. And thank you for being so open and honest
mm,
about it as well, because a lot of people can go through a hardship like that and kind of hide it and hide away and sort of pretend it never happened. But we only learn through other
yeah,
mistakes. So thanks for sharing your story.
yeah. Cool, mate. No worries. And that's where I think a couple of years after we'd sold out, my wife said to us, "Oh, like how are we looking?" Like we weren't old, but like maybe just turned 40 or around that. She goes, "Oh, like how are we looking for our retirement?" And then it just made me stop and think, "Oh, bloody hell, okay." And then I thought, "Nah, that's all right. There's still got like 20 plus years till retirement age. Historically in Australia, properties double every 7 to 10 years, they say. So if you buy in the right location, leverage up, then we can still have a good retirement. It's not too late." And then that's when I started doing a heap of research and then found out, discovered all these metrics which are used to pick the right locations. And that's when I discovered buyers agents, and I spoke to quite a few of them. Was getting ready to use one, and then something happened with work and things changed, and then that's when I thought, hold on, with all of the lessons that I've learned through my own experience with all the mistakes I've made, that I can really help other people from making the same mistakes. So that's when I started my own buyer's agent business. Yeah, and I still, when I'm talking to a prospect, the main thing I always tell them, I don't mind if we don't end up working together, but the only advice I can give you is don't buy off the plan, buy an established house, just a house like what you grew up in, and resist the urge to sell. You make your real wealth over the long term. So that's yeah, they're the main things that I always try to just pass across to anyone I speak to. Yeah,
And their gold. And anyone listening who is thinking about that or in that space, I think your story sort of gives them a decent reason not to. And does that sort of quote all feed into your sort of your property one liner?
oh, there you go, Jordan. Yes, resist the urge. That's all. That's all. Resist the urge to sell. If you're thinking of selling, resist the urge.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Don't sell.
definitely
Yeah, yeah,
definitely a big one, and I think a lot of people sort of live in the now, and as you did, it'd be
yeah.
nice to, like, I've got an
Mm,
expensive principal place of residence. It'd be nice to have a bit more cash on side, so it's not too much of a burden or whatever it might be. But 5, 10, 15 years down the track, you kind of look back and go, I still could have held on to that, and everything would have been fine. And yeah,
100%. Yeah, and that's the beauty of the the banking system now, that you can usually, if you're sitting on some equity, you can pull some out. So therefore, you're still holding the property, you're utilizing leverage still, and you're still going to make the whatever percentage you're going to over the long term by
yeah.
holding the property. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. It's
yeah,
interesting that you mentioned that equity wasn't such a big thing back in the day. It'd be yeah, I can't imagine how the whole economy and wealth
yeah.
and talk of all that has changed over time. So yeah, super interesting.
And this is how stupid I was. I actually worked for a bank at the time. Add that to the list.
Far out, far out. Yeah, I suppose that yeah, you probably yeah,
Uh,
you would have had more
it
experience.
was only a small bank in New South Wales. So no, this is back in 2000. Yeah, it wasn't a thing back then. So anyway, you
Cool.
learn from your mistakes. Learn from your mistakes,
Spot
mate.
on, mate,
Yeah.
and hopefully others can learn from your mistakes as well, and help themselves through their own journey by doing that. But mate, thanks again for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
No worries to all the people listening who feel like they're losers. Don't. You'll be right. You can get through it. You can get through it. It's all right.
Exactly. I love it, mate. Well,
Yeah.
I'll
Tomorrow's another day.
Spot on. Spot on. Well, I'll catch you soon, yeah?
No worries, Jordan. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No worries.